Welcome to Module 1 of the Peace System, the sanity-saving priority management system for creative entrepreneurs. I am Lisa Robbin Young, and this is a tool that I developed years ago and still use to this day to help me keep my priorities in check and my activities and to-dos in alignment with what really matters in my life and work. And today, I'm sharing it with you. This session is an overview of the entire 5-step system so that you can start experimenting with it as soon as we conclude today. This module also gives you the foundational definitions of the 5 key areas of success, and through them, we'll take a closer look at the difference between duties and responsibilities and why that's important. Lastly, your homework will begin with a powerful questioning tool that you can take out into your day and start using right away. Our next sessions cover the specifics of each step, and I'll also be providing you with a variety of exercises, one of the new additions to the Peace System this time around, because I've learned that not every tool works for every person in every situation. I wouldn't want you trying to use right-handed scissors if you're a lefty, and I wouldn't want you trying to use a bulldozer to weed your garden. So this time around, I will be sharing multiple examples of the Peace System in action so that you can tailor it to your needs and find the approach that works best for you. So let's begin with an instant experience that my colleague and friend once shared with me. It is such a powerful exercise that you'll get a new level of awareness in just the time it takes to do it. So inhale normally, and now let out all the air. Keep exhaling. Don't inhale. Just keep exhaling, exhaling, exhaling. Let out all the air in your lungs. When you think there's nothing left, let out a little more and then hold it. Notice the tension and the other disempowering sensations in your body. Now breathe. You can't continue to give, exhale, exhale, exhale all the time. Now let's swing the other way and take a deep breath in. Now take a little more in, a little more, a little more. Keep inhaling until you can't take in any more air and hold it. And again, notice the tension and the other disempowering sensations in your body. Now, breathe again. Try and find some normalcy. You can't take all the time either, can you? No. There has to be an ebb and a flow. You have to be able to give and receive. There has to be time for you as well as time for others. And that's how we become healthy, whole, interdependent beings in the world. As a creative entrepreneur, it can be tempting, perhaps even easy, depending on your creative type, to bounce from one project or shiny object to another without completing things. Or we complete things, but they aren't the things that create forward momentum for us. That's that give sensation in action in our daily lives, and we feel depleted and drained and anxious. It can also be easy to get so focused on our work that we forget about the rest of the world. That's the inhale, inhale, inhale experience. So we have to find balance, which doesn't look like the scales of justice all neatly equal on both sides. It's more like spinning plates or ballet. You're always on your toes and things are constantly in motion. You have to know where to put your attention to keep the plates from crashing to the ground. And, maybe you've had years of skill building to be able to make it look effortless. And you've learned what it takes to clear the distractions from your mind so that you can do the best you can where you're at with what you have. That's why this is the only tool that I've continued to use year after year. It's a framework. I like using frameworks because they're flexible enough to allow my chaotic creative side some wiggle room, and they're rigid enough to provide just enough structure for my linear creative tendencies. In fact, I can attribute most of my accomplishments over the past decade to the work that I've done through the Peace System, which is why it's so important to me that I share this with you in the most accessible way possible. For a lot of my life, I was doing tons of things, and yet I wasn't feeling successful. Other people would look at me all impressed, and they would say things like, "Wow, Lisa, you've done some amazing things." And yeah, I guess it was true for a woman who started her life in a mixed race, blended family that got by on welfare, I have come an incredibly long way. But I couldn't see that. I was so mired down in what wasn't working that I often failed to acknowledge what was working. And even worse, I had let my focus lapse, and I was often busy doing things that really didn't matter to me. Now, don't get me wrong. I enjoyed a lot of what I was doing. I was raising kids, attending school functions, taking care of my family, my home, trying to be a good wife, running a business, meeting with clients, teaching, training, and yes, putting out fires in my life and my work when they showed up. But more often than not, much of what I was doing was more about taking care of what was right in front of me instead of making progress on my real dreams and goals. You can do a lot of good in the world and still be unfulfilled. Let me say that again. You can do a lot of good in this world and still feel unfulfilled. You can save lives, you can make a difference, you can be part of something bigger than yourself and still feel like a total failure. Why? Because the things that really truly matter to you aren't getting done. So let's take a look at that for a minute. I see this all the time with creative entrepreneurs. They put their own dreams and goals on the back burner, sometimes for decades, in order to care for what's on their plate in the moment. Instead of making space to pursue their own interests, they push them aside and do all the other things that keep coming up first. The problem is, those things keep coming up. There's always something else that needs to be done. So the one question I always ask my clients is this: if you won't make yourself a priority, why should anyone else? This isn't about being arrogant. It's about acknowledging that you matter just as much as anyone else, and your dreams, goals, and desires have value. They wouldn't be in your heart if they didn't have value. Spending your entire life putting them aside for everyone and everything else will only leave you feeling empty, bitter, resentful, and yes, unfulfilled. No matter how much good you've done in the world, if you don't take care of you, there will always be this feeling of not enoughness in your soul. So it's not about doing more things. It's not about packing more into your day. It's about focusing on the right things at the right times. It's about getting clear on what really matters to you. Even if it doesn't jibe with what the people around you say should matter to you. Even if it doesn't make sense to anyone else, it makes sense to you. That is what you're going to get clarity on in the peace system. Because once you know your real priorities, you have a filter through which you can pass every other situation, opportunity, potential expense. You'll know exactly what to spend your money on, when to do it, and how. You'll know when to say no with grace and confidence, and you might even find that saying no is sexy. How would it feel to be able to wake up each day knowing exactly what to focus on, exactly where to put your energy during the day? How would it feel to know you've got a handle on things no matter what emergencies arise? You can have that kind of clarity with the peace system. That's the kind of clarity I'm talking about when you start to use the peace system consistently every day. Now, what I'm sharing today did not come easy to me. It took me 2 years to develop this system before I taught it the first time. And some of you listening might remember that first class. Then I took another 2 years of tweaking and testing it before I taught it again. And it's been about 5 years or so since I taught it last, and a lot has changed since then. I've learned new ways of moving through the peace system that give me more clarity, gives me a deeper connection with myself and with the divine, as well as all the new tools that I'm excited to be sharing with you in this version of the program. So you will have an array of things to choose from to help you move with clarity, confidence, and courage through your day. For most creative entrepreneurs, there's an ebb and a flow, a give and a take that allows us the freedom to be our best and do our best. There are times when we'll do more giving and other times more taking. But as long as we maintain that balance, we can keep going. Over the years, I've identified what I call the 5 key areas of success, which are a guide to help keep your life and work in balance. When you put energy and attention into each of these areas consistently, you'll be able to feel a sense of balance and peace, even when things get whirlwindy around you. On the other hand, if you neglect any one of these areas for too long, you're going to start experiencing the same sensations that came up for you earlier when you stopped breathing. Whether you're giving all the time or taking all the time, eventually you stop breathing. Think of these like bank accounts. You have to make regular deposits to cover your expenses. When you withdraw from those accounts, there better be something in there because there's no overdraft protection. You can't really make up for missed investments in these 5 key areas. You can't make up for a minute of your life that you've given over to something that doesn't empower you. That minute is gone and you can never get it back. All you can do now is move forward. Life only happens once, as far as I know. So you're investing bits and pieces of your life in everything that you choose to do. So are you investing yourself in what really matters, or in stuff that other people think should matter to you because it matters to them? Spending time listening to me teach you is time you're never going to get back. It's life you will never get back. So it damn well better add value to your existence. My goal is to have you walk away and do something, not just say, wow, that was awesome, but to actually go back into your life and make a positive change in yourself, your work, your world. Heck, I value my own life enough to not want to teach stuff that isn't meaningful. I'm investing in you right now as I create and present this work to you. I'm putting hours of my life into making this useful for you. Why would I do that if there wasn't a positive return on the investment for me? It wouldn't make sense to do it if I couldn't positively impact my own life in the process. It's an investment. So make the commitment right now. Commit to yourself that you're going to go through this process and actually put it to use. You'll make an honest effort to implement what you're learning so that you can see improvements in your life and in your work. You are worth it. Trust me, you are. You're worth it. So let's briefly go through the peace system outline. Let me tell you what each of the letters stands for. P stands for prayer or meditation. This is your opportunity to connect to your divine self and hear what your heart truly wants for you. And I know that sounds kind of metaphysical and woo-woo, but it doesn't have to be. You'll learn more about that in our next lesson. E is to examine your priorities. This is where you get to dump all the to-dos out of your head and take a look at what's really important in those 5 key areas for the day. Now, the 5 key areas of success are faith, family, fitness, fortune, and freedom. I wrote about them in my book, The Secret Watch. There are 12 inscriptions for each key area. We'll talk more about those later. A, assess your must-dos. When we talk about duties and responsibilities today, you're also going to get an insight into a big problem most creatives have: taking on too much. Dun, dun, dun. You have to get clear on what's really going to go on your list of priorities for the day. And that means some stuff probably isn't going to make the cut. The stuff that's a must do makes the cut every single time. C stands for clarifying expectations. This is what I call the triage step. Why is your list so much longer than you could possibly accomplish without Hermione Granger's time turner? Like, what are the things that you keep pushing off? And why in the name of all that is holy do you keep it on the list if you're never gonna do it? There's a reason. And this step helps you see the truth and make better decisions for tomorrow and beyond. E, exit with hope and expectation. And this is more of a symbolic gesture than anything else. This is the quickest and easiest part of the peace system, and it doesn't require much in the way of explanation. So when we get to that part, we'll talk more about it. And it really is that simple. That's the framework that's going to save your sanity. I know it saved mine. Every day I get up and the peace system has become part of my sacred practice. And when I don't do it, I feel the effects. I'm scattered, unfocused, unclear. I'm bumping around in my day. And since that's not a feeling that I want, I continue to do this nearly every single day. So, prayer and meditation, the P. For me, most days, it's still just simple journaling. In our next lesson, I'll actually walk you through a couple of different ways to experience this step of the system. Whether you pray, meditate, practice a grounding or centering exercise, or just sit silently for a minute or two. The point of this step, this P step in the peace system, is to disconnect from the buzzing noise of the external world and tap in to you, to your inner wisdom, your divine self, God, the universe, your inner knowing. I don't care much how you identify with that benevolent energy that exists within you. I just want you to connect to it. Find that place of calm, peace, love, light, goodness that pulls you away from that droning hubbub of the world around you so that you can really hear what's going on with yourself. That's the place you're trying to get to. So if for you that's guided meditation or visualization, great. Meditation, coolio, reading scripture, getting on your knees to pray, fantastic. Morning pages, awesome. The whole point of this first step is to disconnect from the demands of the world and reconnect to the space that allows your needs, wants, dreams, and desires to actually be heard. So after I find my happy place, I examine my priorities. This is where your 5 key areas of success come into play. Now, these are my definitions, so be aware that your definitions of these key areas may be a little different or need some tweaking. That's the beauty of this system. I love to use frameworks. And these 5 key areas are another framework. So it's a framework within a framework. And like a jungle gym, it provides just enough structure so that you can be really creative, but not so much that it feels like you're in prison. Okay, so here are my definitions of these 5 key areas. Faith. What is it that causes you to live a faith-filled life, one of hope and joy? For me, faith is less about religion or church or spirituality than it is about finding the alignment of your core values and beliefs. Okay, it's the journey to belief rather than an actual knowing. The example that I like to use is that you have a core value of self-preservation, and you believe that people in general obey the laws of the world so that we can all stay safe. Therefore, you have faith that the person coming down the road on the opposite side is going to stay in their lane and not come careening into you. You don't know that they will because anything can happen, but you have faith that the odds are good you'll be okay. You don't stay stuck in your house, huddled in a corner, rocking back and forth, screaming about the crazies on the road and how no one is safe and oh, what a world, what a world. I know that seems like an absurd example, but you can pretty much apply this anywhere. If you believe that the world is basically a good and healthy place, you'll operate in it like it's a good and healthy place. If you believe it's filled with poisons and dangers and hatred and rage, you'll carry yourself with a different level of awareness about your environment. Neither is necessarily right or wrong. They just inform how you show up in the world. So if you believe the world is good and you have a core value that says you're the kind of person that likes to help people, then when you see a stranger on the street asking to borrow your cell phone to make a call, you're more likely to let them use the phone than you are to call 911 yourself and start running in the other direction. So faith, to me, is how I live a faith-filled and hope-filled existence. That's my definition of faith. What's yours? For some people, spirituality and religion is very much an integral part of that definition. What's the definition for you? Family. To me, family are the people who empower and uplift me. Typically living, but not always. Sometimes they're even fictional. At one time, Captain America was part of my family. I've had toxic relationships with my blood relations, so I don't always count them as part of my family. I also have some really great friends who are like siblings to me, so they are part of my family. You get to decide how you define family. Is it purely blood relatives? Do you not even want to like count your family, your blood relatives as family? That's totally up to you. How do you define family? Now, most people think of fitness and start obsessing over health and weight loss goals. Gotta lose 10 pounds, gotta lose 100 pounds, gotta lose 50 pounds. But for me, it's about the total fitness package. How am I functioning mentally, emotionally, socially, physically? What will help me live in a peak state of fitness? Remember those toxic relationships? Sometimes those belong in the fitness key area because they do a number on your mental health, for one. So think about how you define fitness. Now, fortune covers a pretty broad swath. It's your business or how you bring in income, but it's also how you spend it, how you save it, the stories you tell about it. My definition is focused around the question of how do I live a life of good fortune? And not in the oh, I'm so lucky sense, but in the I've been really blessed to live this life sense of the phrase. And you'll also notice, and I like to point this out, it applies to all the key areas, but this one in particular, fortune is only one of the 5 key areas, which means about 20% of your energy is invested here on average. If you're putting all your energy into fortune or any of the other key areas, something is horribly awry, okay? If you're dedicating an average amount of time to each, about 1/5 of your time is going to be focused in each key area. Freedom. Now, freedom is not a catch-all for everything else in your life and work, because I hope you've discovered by now that everything else, quote unquote, doesn't necessarily belong in your life. It's the elements of your life that make you feel that sense of freedom. I need to do things to have a good time as part of self-care and recreation as a form of self-care. So for me, fun, friends, adventure, but more than just fun, because sometimes doing the work in this key area isn't fun. Freedom represents the more nebulous element of what success feels like to you. Now, maybe that's spending unstructured time creating, or with your family, or traveling, or reading, or whatever. Maybe it's making a greater financial contribution to a worthy cause or a charity. Maybe it's cleaning your house. I don't know. It's about being in a position where you never have to compromise your truth to live your life. That is how I define this key area. How do you define it? What is freedom to you? So you need to define these key areas for yourself and then get clear on what is most important for you in each of those key areas. That way you can set your priorities for the day. So I use my Dream Blazing program to help me clarify my goals in each of those key areas for the year. But before I had Dream Blazing, I would just look at my 5 key areas and think about what was most important for me in each of the areas. So for example, in the key area of faith, I know I need some alone time this month, so I need to schedule my away day for the month and let my family know when I'll be on my spiritual retreat. Family. I know that quality time with my kids is important to me, so I plan to spend an hour with my youngest working on his Christmas wish list. In the key area of fitness, I'm trying to cut the gluten out of my diet, so I need to remember to pick up the gluten-free bread at the store. In the key area of fortune, I want to make sure my income stays consistent, so I need to send out the email about my upcoming live event. In the key area of freedom, I need to get out of the house and get some fresh air, so I make a plan to drive up to the park and have a picnic lunch. Those are just examples. So the beauty of this system and the 5 key areas is that you get to decide how things work. You get to create definitions that work for you. Maybe you have really close friends who are as much a part of your family as any blood relative. That's awesome. Maybe your fitness goals focus more on mental health. That's great too. These key areas are flexible enough for you to get clear on what each one means to you, and then select the activities that serve those priorities. So after I've examined my 5 key areas, I assess my must-dos for the day. That's A, assess my must-dos. This is where all the other tasks, activities, demands, necessities come into play. You've already decided what's most important in terms of your 5 key areas. You do that first. Those are must-dos that need to go on the calendar for the day. After that, then you get to look at all the other to-dos and determine what place they have on your agenda. Now, if you're like most creatives, you have way more on your to-do list than you could ever accomplish in a single week, let alone a single day. And if you're a fusion creative, you're thinking that you can probably do all that stuff and maybe a little bit more. You just need to not sleep or eat or pee to do it. So instead of filling up both sides of your sticky note with 45 jillion things to do, you need to get ruthlessly honest about what is really going to be a worthy use of your time, a worthy investment of minutes of your life that you will never get back. So you sort out the must-dos from the other to-dos and tasks. Now, I call these IPA. And IPA has 2 definitions. If you've seen the video or read the blog posts, IPA has 2 different definitions. Income-producing activities, important personal activities, which we'll go over later in this course. I just want you to know that that's what they stand for. Anything that's not IPA is a drain on your resources. It doesn't mean they don't still need to be done. And you may be in a situation where they have to be done by you, but this is the step where you get clarity on what will be on the calendar for the day. But what about all the stuff that doesn't make the cut? That's what the next step is for. C, clarifying expectations. There's a reason you're taking on too much. It could be that you've never really gotten a handle on how much time it really takes to get things done. It could be that you're letting the demands of other people run your life. It could be that you've got emergencies cropping up on your plate more and more frequently, and well, you just have to put those fires out. All of that could be true. And yet, there are boundaries that you can set to reclaim your time in your life. As you'll learn in a future session, many emergencies come up because you didn't handle the regular must-dos in a timely manner. You kept putting off the routine car maintenance, and now you got a flat tire that leaves you waiting on the side of the road for an hour, and it pushes your whole schedule out of whack for a day. Not every emergency is avoidable, but many are. And right here is where you get to be more proactive. You get to look at what you're putting off and get clear about why it's not getting done today so that you can make a plan for it tomorrow or the next day, or maybe never if it's something that just needs to come off your to-do list entirely. And that's something special we're going to talk about. This is where you get to clarify and right-size your expectations around your workload. So you can focus on doing less and still accomplish more of the right things in your life and work. Because let's get real for a minute here. And this is where we get into duties and responsibilities. Creative entrepreneurs, and women in particular, have taken on too many responsibilities. And typically, we do it out of guilt or fear. We look at our duties, the moral and legal obligations that we have as members of our chosen community. That's how I define it. And when we neglect them, we feel guilt or fear or shame. And that causes us to take on responsibilities that we think will fill the gap when what we should be doing isn't getting done. As if we're trying to quote unquote make up for not doing our duty. And as I said earlier, there is no make up. You can't make up for an investment you didn't make. Sometimes you can make amends, but you can't go back and change the past. All you can do is move forward. But we don't often see it that way. So priorities come in 2 forms, duties and responsibilities. Duties are moral or legal obligations that must be done by you. Responsibilities are optional and additional activities and commitments that may tie into your duties, but are not a duty in and of themselves and rarely have to be done by you. iPhones for your children and pay their monthly phone bill. You do have a duty to keep them safe. So getting them a phone might be a responsibility that you're willing to take on in order to help keep them safe. If you're a parent, you have a duty, a moral and legal obligation as a member of your community to provide a level of care, a level of education, a level of nutrition, clothing, and shelter for your child. It is your duty to provide the basics of life. Everything else is frosting. But then something happens. Like you're investing a lot of time in your business, or you get sick, or you have to take your attention away from your duty with that child to tend to something else. Then the guilt creeps in, or the fear that you're not a good parent. So in order to quote unquote make it up to them or some such, you take on a new responsibility, like driving them to play practice or attending all the dance rehearsals or whatever this new task is that temporarily assuages the guilt or fear you're feeling. But it still doesn't quite hit the mark. Why? Because you haven't addressed the original issue of what really matters. You're just masking it with new responsibilities and ones you might not even want to be doing in the first place. That's how you become responsible for things you'd be better off saying no to, so that you could better fulfill your duties. Now, I'm not telling you to skip your kid's choir concert. What I am saying is that it's important to be intentional about the responsibilities you're taking on. Don't become responsible for all the things that all the other people in your life want to see happen. That's the fast train to burnout, exhaustion, and resentment. And when you get in the habit of picking up someone else's responsibilities, they'll probably let you, for one, because it's a load off of them, but two, it can start to feel like a duty even though it's not. And then you start apologizing for having a life that interferes with those responsibilities. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't drive the carpool this week. Sally's brother has a dental appointment. Oh, I'm so sorry, I can't be available for a client session that day. I'm going to be on vacation. And I know this because it happened to me. I felt like I had to apologize and explain away my guilt because I couldn't keep up with my responsibilities, all because I was prioritizing them over my duties. And so this vicious cycle begins where you keep piling on the guilt and fear because your duties feel so mundane compared to the responsibilities that you promised to handle. Stop apologizing for being your awesome self. Stop apologizing for the priorities that are important to you. Stop apologizing for saying no when no is actually the best thing for everybody. You owe no one an apology for the life you have chosen to live. Unless you're violating someone's human rights, which is highly unlikely if you're in this class. You owe no one an apology for the life you have chosen to live. So instead of deferring with, I'm sorry, I can't, why not try, I'd love to, but I already have plans. Because that's closer to the truth. You're not sorry that you have to take your kid to the dentist. That's your duty. You're not sorry you're taking a much needed and well-deserved vacation. You're actually thrilled, maybe even grateful that you're able to do those things. But instead of taking ownership of that, you defer and you deflect. So stop apologizing. It's time to take ownership of what your real priorities are, instead of worrying about whose toes will get stepped on if you say no. Get clear on what your duties are and stop taking on new responsibilities out of guilt and fear that comes from feeling like you're not measuring up on your duties. Do you see how silly this is? I'm not fulfilling my duties, so let's add more stuff to my plate that makes it even harder for me to keep up on my duties. But those things are more fun and more sexy in the moment, and I'll feel better about myself for a hot second until I don't anymore. I mean, with apologies to Einstein, I think that's a better definition of insanity. There are two things I want to say about this. First, the word duty can make it sound like it's something you have to do versus something you want to do. I wanted to spend quality time with my kids and show them how much I love and support them. I still do. You can be joyful in fulfilling your duties. And sometimes it means taking on a responsibility in order to do that. That's fine. Second, you can love a responsibility even if it distracts you from your duties. My oldest was in a children's choir. I loved directing the choir. I really enjoyed being in front of those kids, helping them not just become better singers, but better people. But I was channeling energy into them, that had I channeled it into my kid at the time, might have produced different results in our relationship. I was just too wrapped up in my responsibility that I loved to see it. It took getting pregnant with his brother to help me clarify that if I stopped directing the choir, I'd have that time back to care for my kids. Okay, if I do that, I'm like, oh, all right, let's try that then. That was like 10 years ago now. More than 10 years ago. So you need to get ruthlessly honest about the responsibilities you've assumed that don't necessarily help you fulfill your duties. You don't have to cut ties with everybody and everything and go live in an ashram on a mountaintop somewhere. You do need to get very clear about what you're participating in and why you're doing it. And I mean everything, from your marriage to your job to your kids to your family. You always have a choice. Even if the people around you don't like it or understand it, you always have a choice. The fewer responsibilities you have, the easier it is to focus. Now, that sounds simplistic, but there is gold in that simplicity. Your duties feed your must-dos. You must provide food, clothing, shelter, etc. if you're a parent. Inside your responsibilities, there are 3 different kinds of to-dos, which we'll go over in a future lesson. And you got to be able to sort through all these to-dos and get clear on what is a must-do. What's a duty? What's a responsibility? And does that responsibility help you get momentum on what's really important? Or is it sucking up valuable resources that you could be putting to better use somewhere else? The more you practice the peace system, the better you'll get at identifying and sorting those responsibilities and doing it quickly so that you can delegate, do it, or just delete those things from your to-do list and get on with your life. You have everything you need to get started. Pray, ground center, whatever you have to do to connect. Examine your priorities, assess your must-dos, clarify your expectations, and then exit the system, which is basically, okay, I'm done. I'm ready to start the day. Closing your notebook. In my case, I close my notebook and put my pen down and I put it in the same spot every day. And I'm like, okay, let's go. That's it. That's exiting the system. It's literally just giving yourself a symbolic start to the day and closure to the process. That's all it is. Okay. You have everything you need. Now, I promised you a very simple questioning tool that you could take away from this session and put to use immediately. We ask one question and we apply it to each of the 5 key areas. So here's the question. What one thing can I do today to help improve this key area? And then you just fill in the blank of whatever the key area is. So what one thing can I do today to live a more faith-filled life? What one thing can I do today to improve my family relationships? What's one thing I can do today to improve my overall fitness? What's one thing I can do today to live a life of good fortune? Or what's one thing I can do today to have a greater sense of freedom? So that's the question. What one thing can I do today to improve whatever the key area is? By asking that question, you will get immediate ideas. Something will pop into your mind because that's how our brains are wired. They are wired to solve problems and find answers to questions. Your brain is wired to answer the question, but here's what happens. You'll get an answer and you'll not enough it. You'll be like, no, not that one. I don't like that one either. You'll wonder how it's related. Like, what does that have to do with anything? Or you'll poo-poo it and you'll search for a better or a bigger answer. I challenge you to remove the judgment. Just ask the question and receive the answer. In fact, let's do it right now. Close your eyes. Center your breathing. Put your dominant hand over your heart and your other hand on your solar plexus, like at the base of your rib cage. For those of you into energy centers, this is your heart center and your power center. Just rest your hands and breathe with your eyes closed. I'll ask the question and you just document the first answer that pops in your head. Whatever it is, just document it, okay? Breathe in. What one thing can I do today that will improve my key area of freedom? Don't overthink it. In fact, don't let your head get involved. Step into that heart space and let your body tell you. Your body knows. What one thing can you do today that will improve your key area of freedom? All right, document it. And instead of poo-pooing it or not enoughing it, whatever it is, even if it doesn't seem like it's related, just go do it. Go do it. Drop the judgment and just do the thing. And then see what shows up. Now, if 75 things popped into your head, just pick one. And it doesn't matter which one, just pick one. The easiest, the hardest, it doesn't matter. And here's a little example to tell you why it doesn't matter. In autumn, which happens every year, the leaves start falling from the trees, and you might not think much of a single leaf. One little leaf falling from a tree. But if enough leaves pile together, they cause something called slippery rail, where a train will lose its grip on the tracks and cause crashes or derailments. One little action, one little leaf, may not seem like a lot. It may not seem like it's enough, but let me tell you, they add up over time. And maybe today it's not enough. Do it anyway. Because if you do it today, you'll be that much closer. If you don't do it today, you'll be that much farther behind because you still have to do that thing. That second place runner or swimmer doesn't take second place because they were hours or even minutes behind the first place winner. Oftentimes, it's down to a fraction of a second. One leaf. One leaf. What is your one leaf for today? Don't poo-poo it, don't judge it, don't second guess it, just get her done. Now, as our session comes to a close, I want to invite you to start using this system in your daily life. Experiment with it. Everything else is nuance and deeper understanding, but nothing is going to teach you better than practice, experience, just getting in there and fooling around with this. You can't break it, okay? It's a framework. It's meant to be fiddled with, okay? So get in there and try it on for size. And if you have any questions, reach out. You can email info@lisarobinyoung.com. Remember, Robin has 2 B's. And I'll make sure you get a response either personally or as part of one of the upcoming sessions. If it's, something that the entire group can benefit from, I'll probably share it in the session. But get started with it and let me know how it's going for you. And until our next session, this is Lisa Robin Young signing off in blessings and peace. Have a great day.